All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You're still watching News Central now. And now we'll go back to the discussion on the new minimum wage and, the debacle and the back and forth between the federal government and the NLC. We have our guest, a public affairs analyst, Francis Chilaka, and he's joining us to discuss further on this. A good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure.
All right. So first of all, sir, how do you think that the difference, in proposed minimum wage figures between the government and the NLC, would affect labor relations and potential industrial actions?
Well, I think the government has not acted in good faith, even though Labour has tried to act in good faith by calling out the strike. It's unfortunate that we're still going back and forth with this whole issue of the minimum wage. I think also that the problem is the fact that Labour is talking about minimum wage, and Labour is not talking about other indices that ought to be taken care of, in order to ensure that when you are paid whether 62,000, 60,000, 100,000, or 250,000, if the inflation is still going up, if the cost of living is still going up, that money becomes useless in the hands of those who have it. I foresee a situation where Labour is likely to embark on an industrial action because 62,000 from 250 is a far cry from what anybody would expect. I know that, yes, the organized private sector is also saying, if we go beyond this figure, it's going to be difficult for us to pay. But I think also that, there's a way out. Raise the wages, reduce the taxes, and everybody will be happy.
All right, so what are your thoughts on the governors, making excuses for FAC allocation, saying that that 60,000 naira is actually too much for a worker, a civil servant to actually earn, that they would spend their FAC allocation on salaries rather than developing the country. A lot of people seem to think that, if these governors have, have focused on, increasing their internally generated revenue and, making the states work, that this won't be an issue in the first place.
Well, the first thing with the governors is that we have a set of governors who are ruling like they're not ruling like governors. They're not ruling like people who have been elected by people. They are ruling as if they are demigods. They're ruling Nigerian states as if they're running empires. It's unfortunate that the governors have come together to say, we can't pay 60,000 naira. But then these are same governors who are allocating the state resources for religious pilgrimages, which ordinarily should not be their problem. These are same governors who are, collecting loans or collecting money from the federal government and dashing out to people that are not likely going to pay it back. So I think the governors are not being sincere, because I remember a few days back, there was a report of how much the governors have spent on entertainment. The governors are living, a life of affluence, and yet they don't want those who work, those who labor for the money that they are spending to also enjoy part of that money. So the governors are being very, very wicked. They are being very unrealistic. They have lost every sense of empathy and every sense of love for the same people that have voted them into power. And this brings to mind, to the forefront, where Nigerians need to begin to think straight before they elect anybody as their leader. They need to begin to think straight. This whole idea of having leaders who do not understand the real purpose of leadership, but all they understand is themselves. How many governors have fixed their states with all the allocations they have been getting? How many of them have done anything we can look back to and say, this man has left a legacy that will go after him? None of them. I mean, if you compare the governors you have today and the governors of the times of the late Jack Condi, you'll find out that the governors we have today they have no sense of development in their system. They have no sense of, patriotism. And that's a very bad situation we're faced with. We have governors who think of themselves and themselves alone, and they care less about the ordinary masses of this country. So any governor that is saying, no, it's going to affect our development, what have they done? Which of the governors can beat their chest and say they have built a road that will last for another 4 or 5 years? Okay. Which of them? None of the governors can say that. And we need to also get to this point where we must realize that whatever money the governors are spending in their so-called development, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the people. And the people must stop applauding the governors each time they construct roads, each time they construct schools and all of that. This is what they owe the Nigerian people. And until we begin to demand for accountability and transparency from these governors, this whole madness will continue.
All right, Francis. Now, considering that, the federal government had suggested 62,000 naira and the governors have rejected 60,000 naira, in your own opinion, how much, considering all the indices that you've mentioned, inflation and all that, how much do you think is, sustainable for workers to earn at this point?
Well, at this point in time, I would say that government, from the state to the federal, should be able to take this figure up to 100,000 a month. And I'm sure that the governors and the federal government can be able to pay 100,000 as a minimum wage for a Nigerian is not asking for too much. Because I'm telling you, a bag of rice today is 80,000 and the prices are not coming down. And you see, a lot of families are finding it difficult to survive because you talk of house rent, you talk of school fees, you talk of transportation, you talk of electricity, you talk of your data, you talk of everything you are doing in Nigeria today is becoming too expensive.
But so is there a possibility? Is there a possibility of the NLC and the federal government reaching that compromise from what you've seen so far?
Well, from what I'm seeing, I think that the federal government or the labor has allowed the federal government to, box them into a corner. Because when they called off the strike, a lot of us said, oh, it's a good thing you don't go to negotiation carrying on. But I think that the federal government is playing a very dangerous game. And I do not see labor accepting 62,000. I do not see that. Okay. And it means that labor is likely going to go back on their protest.
All right, well, thank you so much for your thoughts on this topic. Francis Chilaka, thank you so much. We appreciate you for your time.
Thank you.